Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, CCX here. It's time for me to go ahead and give my final thoughts, or I should call it the CCX's final thoughts on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and which one is better, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the N64, or The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the 3DS. Now, the thing is that there are many things that The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3DS version does better than the original. The first thing we're going to go through is visual effects. Now, the enhanced visual for the 3DS version ends up really making certain environments pop. A lot of people will go ahead and end up stating that they prefer the original visuals for the N64 version. Now, don't get me wrong, I do prefer the visuals in the N64 version compared to the 3DS version, but there's just something about that the 3DS version has over the N64 version. Now, there are a couple of changes that I kind of wish that the 3DS version could have done for me to make it a little bit 100% better. Now, I know that the game does run at a very smooth 30 frames per second, even though to me, in my eyes, it actually does not seem like it does, because when it comes to trying to move in as the Deku Link, trying to do the spin to be able to get a much distance jump doesn't really work for me. And also, when you're racing the Butler, it's a little bit more difficult to try to just do it as the Deku Link, even though it's a more appropriate way, since the Butler kind of sees you as his son. I kind of feel that you can't really do that for the 3DS version because the Deku Link's speed has been decreased. Now, the other changes. I love the changes for the 3 bosses. Not for Twin Mole, but I will go into more detail on that later. Now, the many changes that with the 3 bosses in mind is that they wanted to utilize more of the mask, like Odawa. In the original, he had the Deku flower there, but you did not need to use the Deku at all to go ahead and beat him. I like that the 3DS version utilizes the Deku Link to be able to stun Odawa and let Link finish it off. Same goes for Goat. Even though for Goat, it was supposed to be just a one-on-one fight between the Goron and Goat himself. But they decided to go ahead and take a little bit of a turn. Whenever you knock off Goat, you could be able to, the weak point ends up popping out, and you could be able to shoot it with fire arrows or arrows to be able to do additional damage. Now, the real major change that I really like is Gyorg. Gyorg has by far my favorite change because of the concept of what it is. Now, in the original version, you could just use Link and Zora. In fact, you can just use the Zora to be able to actually beat Gyorg as well. But the problem is that it didn't really utilize the Zora Link to its full potential. The Zora Link in the 3DS version had the capabilities of being used throughout the entire fight, being able to stun Gyorg and fight him underwater from a Zora and a fish. So Link was not involved in that fight at all, and it's one of the changes that I'm really grateful for. For Twin Mole, however, I'm not really appreciative of the changes that they did for Twin Mole, considering the fact that I understand that they wanted to put more emphasis on the Giant's mask by making you into a giant yourself, but the fact is, it doesn't really make any sense as to why your sword and your shield disappears, considering the fact that the boss fight was fine in itself. If they wanted to actually make Twin Mole for the 3DS fight a little bit better, what they could have done is they could have made it a little bit faster in defeating Twin Mole without having it drag on if you accidentally fail in the mechanics. The other change is Majora herself. I do not like how pathetically easy it is to defeat Majora. And I kind of wish that Majora had a bit of a better change, considering the fact that the game is called Majora's Mask. Majora doesn't really do as much as I think. Considering the fact that it's supposed to be the final battle, it doesn't really have much of a huge impact. Now, I know that you guys will probably say that if you look behind the story of the fierce deity being the dark version of Link and Majora being the dark version of all the masks in existence, having these two clash is, very interesting. But I kind of find that compared to the last game that we had before Majora came out, Ocarina of Time, when you fought Ganon, I prefer how that fight ended because it's literally Link versus Ganon. Majora could have had a much better incarnation of herself. It could have had a fight that literally puts you not inside the moon, but probably outside the moon. I mean, probably puts you outside, on top of the moon, since you're essentially fighting both her and the moon at the same time. I kind of would feel that if they changed her slightly, or better yet, if you went out of your way to get all the masks, got the Fierce Deity mask, and also managed to keep the 4 remaining masks alive, I would have liked it that once you killed Majora's Wrath, she would take the essence of the 4 remaining boss masks and have a true final form. Majora's Chaos, probably. Now, of course, the only changes that not many people like is the Zora swimming mechanics. The best thing that the N64 end up giving us is by far the most awesomest swimming mechanics that they could ever actually give us. And it's a shame that the 3DS version wanted to quote-unquote give us precise swimming, even though, to be honest with you, playing the 3DS version, the swimming mechanics feels a bit clunky, even if it is a swifter swim. But I don't like that the electric attack is essentially the only way for you to actually swim properly. It's by far the worst change that they could ever do. Now, for the other mechanic, which is essentially the saving mechanic, I appreciate for what they did for that, because to be perfectly honest with you, the saving, not many people had the capabilities, and back then I should say, not many people had the capabilities of just sitting down playing the game throughout the entire time, because some people might actually forget to save. Or some people, you know, it's essentially something that they took with Skyward Sword and decided to implement it in Majora's Mask. Now, the thing is that most people think that it's way too easy, and it ends up taking away out of the desperation that you really have, that time is still, you know, close at hand. And I understand that, but you also, there's like two sides of it. There's the side that doesn't really appreciate this change, and there's the side that doesn't. What I would say is I appreciate the change because it ends up meaning, especially since it's on a handheld, if it was on a bigger console, then I'll have a bit of an issue with it. But since it's not on a bigger console, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not going to go ahead and end up having to start over every single time, considering the fact I'm playing on the 3DS, since I'm going to have it as a handheld. But to be honest, the owl statues itself, it could have still acted like the original instead of acting like a permanent save. But what are you gonna do? I do like that you actually don't need the Deku stick, or you can be any mask to be able to activate the owl statues. I do like that. And I guess the final verdict, I can't really pick, because the thing is that there's points for the 3DS version and there's points for the original version. I like the original version for how much it fits for me, how the movement it is, how the visuals for the area feels a little bit more intimidating. But you also have to take consideration, guys, that the 3DS version has the much better upper hand, because the visuals, as I played the 3DS version again, it's changed certain visuals for the game to make it a little bit more, to fit the game better. My only issue is that I didn't like that they got rid of the Triforce in the 3DS version, because Termina is essentially supposed to be an opposite version of Hyrule. So seeing that the Triforce is there, being domesticated, or not really domesticated, being shunned upon by the many people of Termina, ends up showing that this world probably used to have the Triforce, but the people of Termina don't really follow up on the Triforce prayers, and they only worship the giants themselves. Sure, the Triforce is never really spoken of in Majora's Mask, and that's probably why they got rid of it in the 3DS version, because the Triforce doesn't really have much implications to the story at all. In fact, the Triforce is never mentioned, and they never really focus on the Triforce at all, so that's actually probably the reason why they got rid of it. I did like the changes of some of the temples. I like that they gave you MP the MP fairies first and not the spin attack, because considering the fact that the spin attack is actually completely pointless. I like that they also managed to go ahead and change Stone Towers' functions, and the Elegy of Emptiness. Whenever you play it, it doesn't go ahead and say you have played this. It just activates the statue for you, so it's a lot fast-paced, it's a lot quicker, and a lot more fluid. I also like that the emblem, the Bloodstained emblem on Stone Tower in the 3DS version, is just literally right on top, so you don't have to go ahead and push the blocks. It ends up saving a lot of time. The 3DS version made it a little bit more smoother for people to actually pick up and play, and I understand people's complaint about it not being as challenging, because the thing that people loved about the original Majora's Mask is the stress and the fact that you're on a time limit and you have to literally do the things at the right time, at the right moment. You can't screw up and you have to go ahead and be almost perfect. But the 3DS version ends up calming that down for people to a point where it gives them less stress, less of a headache, and it ends up not breaking the pace for them. And that's a good thing. There are some ways that I can go ahead and say that if you want to play a harder version of Majora's Mask, play the original version. If you want to play the easy version of Majora's Mask, play the 3DS version. If you want to see how it first all started, play Majora for the N64. I recommend it. But if you want to go ahead and see the much visual updated version with all the graphics and mechanics, then play the 3DS version. It's really your choice. I'm just a guy on the internet that's just telling you guys how it is. But anyways, I hope that this sort of answered the question. It probably didn't, knowing myself, because I don't really know. Whenever I end up saying stuff, I kind of sound stupid. But anyways, I've been CCX. Until next time, I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed Majora's Mask, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next Zelda game. And once again, Maverick Hunters, catch you guys next time. See yas!